Good afternoon. It is September the 2nd. My leaves and my trees here in this location have taken a bit of a beating this summer. It started with some unusual weather in the spring. Lots of fog and humidity, always on the leaves. Then the sun would come out and scorch them. And they took a beating, but away from that subject, I'd like to talk about how it didn't affect my fig harvest in any way. I've had a wonderful fig harvest, notwithstanding the beating that my figs took in this location. And today, specifically, I wanted to speak to you on the subject of the Adriatic classification of figs. Now, I've talked about this particular fig. It came from the mountains of Taormina, Italy. My uncle brought it back. My Uncle Mario. I talked a bit about this story, not too much about this variety. But this is an Adriatic that he brought back some 65 or 70 years ago, and he talked about it all the time, and he loved it, and I loved it. I think I told the story once how he lived next door to me when I was a teenager, many decades ago. He and my aunt, Lucy, my family listening to this know all of this, lived next to my mother and father, and they had 3 daughters, and my mother and father had 3 sons. And this was one of his special figs that he brought back, along with what he called the Feliciano Bianco, which is the closest relative, I think, to that fig that he brought back from the Valley of St. John in central eastern Italy, where my other ancestors, some of my other ancestors, my grandfather came from on my mother's side. My father came, and I said it to him, he came from Frata Maggiore, which is at the foot of Mount Vesuvius, the famous volcano of Pompeii. So I have a rich heritage, I think, and I could go on and talk about that more, but I won't, not now. But this Adriatic was a special fig that came from the mountains, and some say the mountains of Abruzzi, but my Uncle Mario used to grow it next to his garage. And when he was at work in the daytime, I told this, and I was a young teenager, I'd come home. I loved this fig so much. I'd come home, and I'd go over to his fig tree, and I'd look for figs, and I'd eat the really ripest ones, just a couple. Of course, I would leave some for my Uncle Mario. And when he'd come back, I can't tell you the words he would use. I saw him from a distance over at my house. I could see him and hear him yelling, actually kind of cussing, I might say. Those something birds, they eat my figs. I never mentioned to him that I absolutely loved figs, even at that early age. But anyway, it's a long story, and someday I want to tell it all. But I saved this fig from being no more. There is no other of this fig. Not in my cousins, nobody has it, only I have it. And the way I saved it was very interesting. Just very briefly, I think I mentioned it before. When my Uncle Mario built a new house for my aunt, because she was sickly and couldn't go down in the basement, he built a 1-level house. And when he moved, he was so busy with everything, a farmer in the family asked if he could have the tree, because he loved it too. So Uncle Mara said yes, and he dug it up, but I saw that they dug it up in the summertime, and I knew it was going to die. And I went over there to the farm, and I saw that it was dying, and I took cuttings from it, and the tree died. But my cuttings, I was successful in getting the cuttings to propagate them, and 50 years later, 40 years later from then, here I am. Still have it. I love this Adriatic. And I want to show you JH Adriatic, because this has been ripe for several days. As you can see, I gotta get under here. I'll probably put you on pause. Well, let me see if I can get in here. Can you believe with all this net, can you believe that a bird got in here and ate some of my fig? Can you believe that? My wonderful Ajax. But I've already eaten several in the last couple of days. So this day. It's an Adriatic. My uncle had no special name for it. He just loved it, as I love it. Let me get in here again. Let's take a look at one here. An Adriatic, by the way. Oh, and it's earlier than JH Adriatic, which I've said in other videos. It's a little bit earlier. My JH Adriatic, which I will show you in a minute, isn't ripe yet. It's starting to, but this one already has been. And it is out in full sun, which I always recommend for fig trees. Full sun. This one gets almost full sun. In the morning, it loses maybe an hour and a half of sun. And you can get away with that, but it's better to have full sun. Let's open this one up. And yet this tree is still earlier than JH. And JH is really known as being one of the earliest. Now look, I'm going to tell you, because I've always tried to convey what is the truth in my eyes, in my opinion. Remember what I said, neck on the chopping block. For what it's worth. How many times have I said that? But I don't think you need to go any further than JH Adriatic. If you could get this, in time you will be able to. I don't think you need to go any further than JH Adriatic for taste and for earliness. This is a superior fig, in my opinion, to that. It's rare. I've given it to a grower this summer, and I gave it to him as a gift in the past, but he kind of lost track of it. But I will divulge all of that information soon. And hopefully he will propagate it and get it to a point where he can distribute this tree, this because I love this. And I've grown Adriatics for so many years, so many different Adriatics. I highly recommend this one. And I would like to call this Valle San Juan, because that's the name it really deserves to have. Valle San Juan. And I'm going to ask the distributor to call it that as well, in honor of where my family came from and my uncle who brought it here to America. Let me grab a taste of this. This is so good. And then I want to tell you a little bit more about Adriatics. Honestly, it's next to impossible for a fig to taste any better than this. And I mean that. Glisteningly delicious. Look at that. Can I get it into focus there? I think that is. Oh, it's so good. I shared one of these already earlier with Debbie, so I'm going to eat the rest of this. I value this tree so much. And it's amazing. There's another one with honey dripping out of it. Look. Can you see that? Oh, I'll give that one to Deb. But I just can't, and with all the experience I've had and the years I've had and the varieties I've had over the decades, I can't tell you how much I value this tree. And you don't need to buy other Adriatics. And another thing here, I don't know how far I want to go with this right now. I don't think I do. But I think those of you who are certainly educated will know what I'm specifically addressing here. But an Adriatic is an Adriatic, an Adriatic. It's an Adriatic, an Adriatic. It's a fig, it's a fig, it's a fig. It's not a black Madeira. It's not like a black Madeira. It's not a Madeira. It's an Adriatic. An Adriatic is an Adriatic. And you don't have to spend exorbitant amounts of money to have a good Adriatic in your collection. So don't do it. Get JH Adriatic. It's a great tasting Adriatic. Get this one. This one's better. But you don't need to go any further than JH. Now, very quickly, let me move over to J. I feel like eating that one right there too. Hold on. We're going to go over to JH Adriatic. Okay, now we're moving over to JH Adriatic, which I featured before. If you want to look back in my videos. And here it is. And you can see that it doesn't have a ripe fig on it. Not one. I can tell that here's one that's only beginning to swell. The rest are smaller than the Valle San Juan. Certainly not ripe. Although this particular tree gets the full benefit of the full day's sun. It's just not quite as early as the Valle San Juan. And it's not quite as tasty. But we're splitting hairs here, let's be honest. Okay? It's a delicious Adriatic. And I've had others. I've got videos if you look back. Battaglia Green, for instance. And I've grown others. And they're good. Adriatics are good. They're good, they're a great fig. But the lesson that I taught you or tried to teach you about the Mount Etnas is exactly the same as I will apply to the Adriatics. There's so many Mount Etna types, hardy Chicago types. So many. 50, 60, 70, 80 types, maybe more, probably a lot more. And they're all essentially the same fig. Now, I told you there's a few slight variations, standout variations like Malta Black, or I like also Sicilian Dark, or Sicilian Black, whatever you might call it. I like Mavricica, but my Mavricica I think is kind of rare. And I featured it. It's the largest of all the Mount Etna types that I've ever... I have about 11 different ones growing right now in my various locations. It's the largest and very delicious, but they're all very close. And it's this, so pick out a good one from a reputable buyer. I've always said this, and I've given you that advice, like Malta Black, and just be happy with it. You don't need to experiment. You don't need to spend a fortune in hardy Chicago types. By the way, I've also mentioned this. Stay away from those that are called hardy Chicago because they might actually be hardy Chicago. And that particular variant is my least favorite. And I've mentioned that before. I don't like it as much. It's not as sweet. It's not as delectable. It's very prolific, blah, blah, blah. And there's lots of good things about it. Lots of other important characteristics. But it's not my favorite. But would I be happy with hardy Chicago if I didn't have any other Mount Etnas? Yeah, it's a good, reliable fig that will always produce for you lots and lots of fruit, and they're high quality when you pick them at the second, not the moment. The second of perfection, which you should pick every fig at the second, not the moment of perfection, but the second of perfection. I'm trying to put a greater emphasis on timing when it comes to ripeness, to that exquisite flavor that you're trying to achieve when growing figs. Something that you can't purchase in a store. You cannot purchase exquisite fig fruit in a store. You can purchase good, tasty fig fruit in a grocery store that maybe comes from California, several days they picked it, but you're never going to get exquisite fruit. And even if it is, by your classification, exquisite, the truth of the matter still remains that it would have been a lot better if it were left on the tree to ripen to perfection another day or half a day or 2 days. Period. End the story. And I would hope that you would agree. So if you get Hardy Chicago at the second of perfection, it's very, very good. If you've got it, be happy with it. It's not a huge difference between that and Malta Black or Sicilian Dark. But there is a slight difference. And then I told you about my unknown, my Hardy Chicago type unknown, which is earlier, and I showed it to you. It's earlier than all my other Mount Etnas, and it is also finished first. So stagger your trees. Remember my video on that. It's good to have, 1 or 2 trees from each classification. Maybe one that's a little bit earlier, one that's a little bit more tasty, but don't go nuts. And don't fall into this entrapment where you're buying 40, 50, 60 different figs that are all the same fig by any other name. And it's the same with the Adriatics. Don't do it. Find a reliable seller with J.H. Ajax and be happy. That's my advice to you. Because it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful fig. I so love the Adriatics. They're so good. Green on the outside, crimson red on the inside. Sweet and delectable with a rich, rich taste. Lots of nectar. Syrupy, delicious flavor. And with a certain tanginess, especially my Uncle Mario's, it has a certain tanginess that I just so love and admire. And I think I've been growing things for a while. So for what it's worth, focus on getting a good Adriatic and then move on. There are other and better fig varieties to acquire than to be redundant. It's superfluous. It's superfluous nonsense. And I'm trying to help you avoid it. I'm trying to steer you away from superfluous nonsense, to go after so many varieties that are all essentially the same. Okay. I hope you had fun. I'm having fun. See how my leaves took a beating this year? Wow. It had no effect. This is my all finished Dessert King, which I like to call it. And you will see that main crop, there's a couple left. You will see that they just fall off. No good, hard as a rock. Because it is a San Pedro type, which we've mentioned. I hope you had fun. There's a warm, wonderful breeze blowing right now. It's so lovely. I can feel fall in the air. The nights have been cold, and we're entering into a hot wave right now. It's supposed to be very hot in the next few days, in the high 90s. Not here, but back in New Jersey. I don't know exactly what it is going to be here, but probably in the mid 90s for a few days, or low 90s. But that's sort of an Indian summer. And after that, we're going to return to the cold nights that I've been feeling the last 8 or 9 days. There's already fall colors in the backfield at my 7A location. This is 7B. I can see the fall colors in the woods across the field where the eagle's nest is. And I recognize the coming of fall. I feel it in the air. I can sense it everywhere. Here in front of you is what I call it wild rice, meadow rice. I never bothered to find out its exact Latin name or anything like that. But look how tall it is. In the spring, it's down just like the lawn would be after being cut. Then it slowly grows and comes to fruition, like all things come to fruition in nature, like we do too. And then the seeds mature. Look at that little bug right there. Can you see that little bug? Can you see it? Right there. Right there. Look at that. I never saw that one before. Amazing. How about that? I have no idea what that is. But it already shed its seeds, what I call rice, which will represent next year's harvest, that grows in the mud of the meadow. It's rich. The meadow's rich. Look down. It's wonderful. Do you see the little fish? The little bullheads? Sometimes I see little different species. There's a larger fish chasing a bunch of little fish there. Can you see that? I hope you can see that. Sometimes I see drumfish babies and stripers, and of course the blue crabs come in here, and there's a good amount of oysters, and there's a good amount also of mussels. Let's take a quick walk. Let me take it off magnification so it doesn't look so bumpy. Here's some mussels here. Here's some fiddler crabs. Can you see the mussels? Can you see the mussels sticking up? Let me see if I can go down deep and zoom in. Can you see the mussels down deep there? Look around. And those little holes each have a fiddler crab in them. They're the crabs that have one big arm, one big claw rather, and one tiny little one. And the little one's more useful than the large one. The little claw is for eating the different plant material, algae and things that it's able to, and other materials that it's able to get with this little, manipulate with this little claw and feed itself. The big claw is just, it's a visual pheromone of sorts, meaning that it attracts the opposite sex. Here they're coming out. Let me try to zoom in for you. Hey, if you're not interested in this sort of thing, turn me off. We're not talking figs the whole time here, but it's interesting. If you're a lover of nature, as I am. Can you see the little crabs coming out? As I'm staying still. The fiddler crabs, can you see them? Here they are. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about my observations. I was saying what a beautiful day it is. And then I can feel autumn in the air, which means that soon the fig season will be over. And that's okay, because that's the order of nature. And I'm fine with that. No complaints. We just simply move on to what other things that fascinate us will be. We experience them. We take it all in. we certainly enjoy the last fruits of our labor. It's not over quite yet. There's still plenty of figs to get ripe, and I'm looking forward to every single one of them. Hopefully we'll have more continued Indian summer right on up until the middle of October, the end. But there is a whole universe to explore and enjoy. And that comes with the seasons. And that's a wonderful thing. It keeps us from bogging us down. It keeps us from being bored. It keeps us energized. It keeps us alive and enthusiastic about the world in which we live. It's a wonderful feeling. And so I embrace it full-heartedly. I embrace it all. So enough philosophy. I hope you enjoyed our chat. Some of you probably dropped away long ago, and that's fine. Thank you for watching for as long as you did. I so enjoy your visits, and there will be many more to come. I have a lot of things I want to talk about. Good day.